Let's take a look at some of the characteristics of these Englishes. The category New Englishes with a capital N include a large number of varieties because these Englishes developed in different regions of the world, the countries which had been colonized by Britain. These varieties include Englishes which are used in Asian countries, for example, Pakistani English, Indian English, Malaysian English, Singaporean English, and also the Englishes which are used in African countries, for example, Nigerian English, Kenyan English, etc. These Englishes are dissimilar in characteristics with each other in many ways, and there are different reasons for that. The reasons are that they developed in regions, geographical regions, which are at a distance, which are far from each other geographically, and also because they evolved in regions where the speakers of these Englishes have some other first languages, or they have many other languages around this particular English. So the new Englishes or the varieties of Englishes which are developed in these outer circle countries are influenced by these different languages. Therefore, they have very dissimilar characteristics. However, they also have some characteristics which are common. One of these characteristics is that all these Englishes are learned, and they're learned as second languages. The speakers of these new Englishes with a capital N, that is, the users of English in the outer circle countries, they all use English as a second language and they have some other language as their first language. And they may have more than one language in their linguistic repertoire, even if they have one first language, obviously. In these countries, English is used also as a medium of instruction. So one can learn English as a second language, and then English is also used to teach other subjects. And so English is additional to some other first language, as we've already said. So what had happened was that British in these regions, they started teaching English to some of the local people in what they call English medium schools. And in this case, to start with, the teachers used to be native English speakers. And gradually, other subjects were also taught in English to ensure that people who were learning English became fully proficient in the use of English. Gradually, the native English teachers were replaced by locally trained English teachers, but English continued to be taught and taught as a subject or as second language, and also as a medium of instruction. The other characteristic which is common among these Englishes is the contact with native variety. In these countries, English developed where native variety was not the main language which was used by the speakers. So there would be very few people who spoke the native English, the colonizers, and there would be very few people who had come to these colonies to govern and control them. This experience or this situation was very different from the first diaspora, where large number of the British people had come for permanent settlements in North America and other regions. In terms of colonization, we didn't have large number of British people who had come and settled in these colonies. There were fewer British people, so the people in the outer circle who were learning English had very little contact with the native English speakers. And this was the case in all the outer circle countries. Then the third characteristic which is common among these Englishes is that is the functions and speakers, the functions for which English is used and who those speakers are, who are the people who use these Englishes. So in these regions, English is used for a wide range of functions, from education to law courts to the running of the government, etc. And it is used among the people who are not native English speakers, but who are the local people. For example, in Pakistan, English is used among Pakistanis, and not many Pakistanis get an opportunity to use English with native English speakers. So in these regions, English has developed as a result of its use among the speakers, among the regional speakers, not as a result of communication of the regional people or the local people with the native speakers. Then there's this um, phenomena which we call nativization or localization. As a result of the presence of many other languages around English, nativization of English takes place, which means English adopts certain linguistic features of the languages which are used by the local people. And these linguistic features include sounds, intonations, sentence structure, words and expressions, and so on. So, in this way, English is nativized as a result of the influence that the local languages exert on English. However, this nativization or the innovations that the users of with a capital N, new Englishes or the speakers of English in the outer circle make are not readily accepted. There are certain factors which are responsible for the acceptance of an innovation, or which grant the status of standard use to a certain innovation in a language. One of these things is the demographic factor, which means who the speakers are, whether the innovation is being used by the people who come from the upper class and use the standard language, or it is used by, or it is developed by people of the lower socioeconomic class who do not use a very good standard English, or whose English is not considered very close to the native standard English. And then there are geographical factors. For example, how far this innovation has spread. Is it being used widely by people all around the world, or is it being used by a very small number of people? And then the authoritative factor. For example, the people who are using it, what kind of authority they have, and in what domains of life this English is being used. Whether it's being used by very important domains in life like education, government, politics, etc. And then a very important factor is codification, whether this language has been standardized and dictionaries have been produced in the language, traditional grammar textbooks have been designed or brought out, the style and and usage guides have been developed and published in this particular language. So if a particular innovation has been codified, has made its place in the dictionaries and grammar books, then it is accepted readily. And the acceptability, by this acceptability factor, we mean that whether people all over the world show a readiness to use it and willingly use this particular innovation. So acceptability of a particular innovation in the use of language by the users of the language around the world.